All right, we're going to do something a little different today. Rachel, you want to come on? I've asked Rachel to come and to share her testimony and share what she feels like the Lord has laid upon her heart, and ask you guys to give her your ear and listen and let her pour out what God has done for her. You know, I heard her testimony back several years ago, and it touched me at that time as well, and we had the opportunity to minister into her heart and her life at that time, and it's amazing to see what God's doing in our midst. So, y'all, welcome her. Is it on?
A little nervous now that I'm up here. Again, my name is Rachel Stevens. I am from Hohenwald, born and raised. I'm going to start with what got me to where I am and leave all of the trash that got me there in the past. I have been struggling with addiction for very many years. I was a meth addict, intravenous meth addict for very many years, and my first encounter with God, I was sitting in my camper trying to get high for a very long time, and God spoke to me in my chest. He rattled my chest, and he spoke to me, and he said, "What are you doing?" And I've never felt anything like the voice of God in my chest. It's something that should wake you up, but it didn't wake me up. I had went on for another couple of months, continuing to do what I had been doing. And then I came back to that same spot and sat down in my camper, and my vision went dark, and it felt like it was raining on my shoulders, and I could see and feel all of the disappointment that my family had for me, the fear that they had in their hearts. I could feel every bit of it. And God spoke to me again, and he said, "It wasn't enough for you to know that I was real. It wasn't enough for you to feel what I feel for you, but you had to see and feel what your family is going through, what you're taking your family through." And at that point, I knew that I had to make a change. I knew that I couldn't keep going down the road that I was going down. So I called my mom, and she got me from my camper, and we didn't go back until we cleaned it out and got rid of it. And that chapter in my life was closed, and I opened a new chapter that I was very scared of. I had never been in recovery. I had never knew God. God had spoke to me, but I didn't know him. I didn't know his character. I didn't know what he could do in my life. So I spent a year-long stay at the Hope Center. The Hope Center absolutely changed my life, taught me what God's character was, taught me how to love God, taught me how God loved me. And I remember reading my Bible, and I was reading in Ecclesiastes, and I got to Ecclesiastes 7:8, which quickly became my life verse. "The end of a thing is better than its beginning. The patient in spirit is better than the proud in spirit." And I knew that that was something that I needed to take forth in my life. Like, I needed to know that it wasn't about me. It wasn't about who I needed to be. It was about who God needed me to be, who God had created me to be. God changed something in me when I read that verse, and I read it probably 15 times over. And I knew that I needed to change from my prideful ways, that didn't get me anywhere, that I needed to be patient, and I needed to finish everything that I started from here out. And so my short-term goal at that time, was to finish the Hope Center and to do what he had called me to do. He has, since graduating the Hope Center, he has called me into a leadership role at Celebrate Recovery every week, where I speak in front of people, which is very nerve-wracking. He has called me into jail ministry, which was a huge goal of mine. I go and I speak at the jail once a week, and that has been such a blessing to me. The same people that I was using drugs with, I get to talk to about Jesus every single day. I get to show them what God has done for my life. I get to show them what God can do in their lives. I get to see them when they get out of the jail, and I get to see them go to meetings. I get to carry them to meetings. I get to share the word with them. A while back, Pastor Chris asked me if I would be interested in serving as a character coach for the FCA, and that has also been a blessing. So God has called me into a lot of speaking in front of people, which makes me kind of nervous and sweaty and awkward. So I'm that right now, in case y'all didn't know. But a verse that really speaks to my heart now is 2 Corinthians 4:16 through 18. Therefore we do not lose heart, even though our outward man is perishing, yet the inward man is being renewed day by day. For our light affliction, which is but for a moment, is working for us far more exceeding an eternal weight of glory, while we do not look at the things which are seen, but at the things which are not seen. For the things which are seen are temporary, but the things which are not seen are eternal. Our job right now is not to worry about the things that we see. It's not to worry about what the world wants us to do. It's about pulling people closer to God, showing them God's character, showing them what God does to your heart. My heart was black and hateful and mouthy, just awful. Ask my family right there. But God has changed me. God has changed something in my heart that where I love others. I love to see people with a hunger for God, because that's all I want, is to be closer and closer to God every single day. And I just thank you guys for letting me share. That's all I got.
We had asked Rachel several months ago to do that, and just never could get things to line up in a way that, on a date that we could make it all work out. But and I want you guys to really understand what Satan does and how he will grab somebody and take you to places that you don't want to go. But when I asked Rachel again, I guess a couple of weeks ago, to speak this morning, I asked her, I said, give me a topic to springboard off of that. And she said she was going to talk about leadership. And so I looked into leadership, and this is where it sent me, and I think it just ties in perfectly. If y'all would go to Matthew chapter 20, and I want to start there. And I won't be more than a couple hours, so we'll be all right. Y'all know that ain't happening, so y'all still laugh at it every time. I won't do like Brother Bill. At least it'll be a long time before I do. We went to Indiana. I'll tell one on him. We went to Indiana deer hunting years ago, and he preached on Sunday morning, I think it was. We stayed at a church there, and there was a pastor friend that they knew. We actually we stayed in the church, And I think Bill preached Sunday morning. He preached so long he forgot what he was preaching about. No lie. And he asked somebody, and they told him. He said, "Oh, okay, that's where I was at." And he took off, and he preached another hour. Like, come on, Pharaoh, let the people go. But we still aggravate him about it. So, Matthew 20, y'all there? Verse 20 says, "Then the mother of Zebedee's sons came to him with her sons, kneeling down and asking something from him. And he said to her, 'What do you wish?' She said to him, 'Grant that these two sons of mine may sit, one on your right hand and the other on your left in your kingdom.' But Jesus answered and said, 'You do not know what you ask. Are you able to drink the cup that I'm about to drink and be baptized with the baptism that I am baptized with?' And they said to him, 'We are able.' So he said to them, 'You will indeed drink my cup and be baptized with the baptism that I have baptized you with. But to sit on my right hand and on my left is not mine to give, but it is for those to whom is prepared by my Father.' And when the 10 heard it, they were greatly displeased with the two brothers. But Jesus called them to himself and said, 'You know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and those who are great exercise authority over them. Yet it shall not be so among you. But whoever desires to become great among you, let him be your servant. And whoever desires to be first among you, let him be your slave. Yet as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life a ransom for many.'" There's only really one true type of leadership as far as Christ is concerned, ain't it? And that's to be leading as a servant. And that's what Rachel's just told us, is that's her heart's desire, is to be leading as a servant, to share the Word of God, to serve other people and to help them to come out of the darkness in the place that she's been, to come into the light where she's now walking and being used. You know, here in verse 26, more or less, he's telling us for us to be a leader, we must be what? We got to be a servant. You know, a lot of people don't want to hear that word, do they? They don't want to think about the thoughts of having to serve somebody. But, you know, I think about it a lot, the word service and working for people and things like that. You know, some people just think that some people just don't have to work for anybody. And I think me and Keston were out the other day, and he brought up a comment. I grew up watching John Wayne movies. Everybody like John Wayne? I love John Wayne. But in the movie McClintock, he was having a discussion with his daughter, and he told her that everybody in this world works for somebody. He said, "I don't care who you are, you work for somebody." You know, so we're serving somebody in some way, form, or fashion. Even if you're working for yourself, you're serving your customers. You may not like to think about it that way, but that's the truth. You're serving somebody. And that's what he told her. He said, I work for everybody in this part of the country that wants to buy a head of beef or wants to buy a steak or something. So we're all working for somebody. We're all serving. You know, in leadership, how many people has served in a leadership role in the workplace as a supervisor or something to that effect? So, you know, everybody thinks they want to be a supervisor, right? I'll tell you, not everybody is a supervisor that thinks they should be a supervisor. And it don't take long to find those things out when they get put in those places, in those positions. But we're all called to be servants. And no matter who you are, you're serving somebody in some way or form or fashion. And, you know, we should be looking to see what more we can do to lead others by being servants. You know, when it was always my philosophy in work that I would rather somebody want to work for me than to feel like they had to work for me. I feel like I get a whole lot more out of you by asking you to do something than screaming and hollering and like some like to do, cuss and carry on and jump up and down and pitch fits and all that kind of stuff. And I worked for a fellow that way at one time, and I told him, I said, I'll tell you what, I said, them boys will do a whole lot more for me if the time ever does come that I have to jump up and down and pitch a fit, because they're going to know that something's bad wrong at that point, other than you screaming and hollering all the time. But so he's told us to be a servant, and I found this, and I wanted to read it to you guys. It says, servanthood is not slavery. You know, too many times we look at servanthood as being slavery, as something that we're forced to do. And that's not what he called us to be. He didn't call us to be slaves. He said we're what? We're free. Be free indeed. But he says, it says it is voluntary, motivated from within by the love of God, not mandated by the style, insistence, or pressure or guilt or demand. And it's not cultish, but Christ-like. Always in the spirit of him who being endowed with heaven's complete authority, chose to take the form of a servant. That's what he did, wasn't it? That was his attitude. That's the way he approached it all, as a servant. But that's verse 26. But let's back up just for a second to verse 25 and let's see what it says. Verse 25 says, but Jesus called them to himself and said, you know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord over it, and those who are great exercise authority over them. Here, Jesus is confronting the world's concept of greatness, which is defined by having high positions, right? I'm the boss. I'm the president, I'm this, I'm that. You know, we look at those things as being the be-all, end-all, right? That's where so many people are shooting for, and they don't care how many people they cut down or run over to get into that place or to get to that position. But that's not what Christ has called us to be or to do, is it? You know, and he showed it. He confronted this concept. And the true greatness of God's kingdom comes through sacrificial service, right? He asked us to give of ourselves. And as Jesus performed these in many different ways, and I got 4 listed here, Philippians 2, verse 5 through 8. It says, let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus, who being in the form of God did not consider it robbery to be equal with God, but made himself of no reputation, taking the form of a bondservant and coming in the likeness of men. And being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself, and he became obedient to the point of death, even the death of the cross. He reconciled us to God in that particular instance when he became our sacrifice, right? The second one is he put on human flesh, John 1:14. It says, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and behold his glory, the glory of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. So he reconciled us and he put on human flesh. And then John 13, if you flip right over to there right quick. If you read verse 5, it says, after that he poured water into a basin, and he began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with a towel with which he was girded. He washed people's feet. He put himself in the position of a servant. You know, and in that particular time, the way I understand it, the person that washed people's feet was the lowest of the low with the servants. If you had to wash people's feet, you was the bottom rung on the totem pole. You didn't have nowhere to go but up. You probably wasn't going very far, but because anybody else won't take your position or your job. But Jesus took this place to show his disciples that to be a servant you had to serve. I mean, to be a leader you had to serve. If you read verse 14 and 15, ease on down there for just a second. It says, if I then, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have given you an example that you should do as I have done to you. So he reconciled us. He put on human flesh, and then he became a servant and washed his disciples' feet. And then he told us to do the same. But if we go to verse 28 of Matthew chapter 20, it says, just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life a ransom for many. He gave his life for us, right? That's the fourth thing that he did there, to show us that servanthood attitude. You know, the old saying that says there's only two people that gave their life for you, and that was Jesus and an American soldier, to be able to have the freedom that we have. And I believe that, you know, Jesus gave us that he was a servant. And in order to be in the military, you have to enlist. And to do that, you sign that dotted line that you are willing to give everything. When you sign that dotted line, it says that you have my life until your obligation is over with. Have we enlisted in God's army, truly enlisted in his army? Are we willing to give him our life to be a servant, to do what he's asked us to do? You know, when you get a set of orders in the military, you don't get to pick and choose. No, I don't believe I want to go there. Don't work that way. I don't want to go to war. Yeah, so what? Your orders say you're going here, and you better be there. If you don't, you're AWOL, deserter. Good thing God don't do us that way, though, is it? There's some people would be in a lot of trouble. But it's really the character of a faithful servant reveals the devotion to the interest of others and the thoughtfulness of rendering untiring care, the delight in the prosperity, honor, and happiness of someone besides ourselves. That's really what servanthood's about, isn't it? And let's jump back up just for another second. We're backing back up, but it's worth it. The Lord really revealed this to me this morning as I was reading this again and typing some stuff out. But verse 22 says, but Jesus answered and said, do you not know what you ask? Are you able to drink the cup that I am about to drink and be baptized with the baptism that I am baptized with? Jesus asked these two disciples, are you willing to go and do what I've been called to do? And what was that? That was to die, right? What has he asked us to do? He's asked us to die, right? But to what? To self, to die to sin. Are you willing to be his servant and die to sin to be able to complete the mission that he's called you to do? If you can't say yes to that today would be a great time to do that as Pam and them come back. Leadership is a key role for us as children of God and people that are called to do his work. You know, we don't need to try and pass our duties on to other people. Our call, his direction. And there's always a place in an area that you can be used. All you got to do is ask. If he hadn't told you, you can ask, and we can definitely use some help. God's speaking. He's wanting to know, are you willing to give it all up to be what His servant and do what He wants you to do? You know, so I'm going to ask today, maybe we just need to take a time as they worship, lead us in worship, to reflect and see, Lord, am I prepared to do what You've called me to do? If not, prepare me, get me ready, help me to hear Your voice, help me to know what You're speaking today, and use me in the leadership place that You have me. And that don't have to be as a pastor, that don't have to be preaching, that could be teaching a class, that could be standing at the door shaking hands, it could be up here early and late praying. There's so many places that you can be used. Just walk in what God's called you to do and allow Him to lead you and use you as leadership, because even these young kids here, whether you know it or not, there's somebody looking at you. Our youth, these young kids are looking at you to see what you're doing. You're leading one way or the other. When you walk out in the job place, you're leading one way or the other. If you're talking just like they are, then you're leading. If you're toting the Bible and you're speaking God's word, then you're leading, whether you know it or not. We got to start leading in the way that we're called to do, and understand that we are always leading, and we're all doing that. There's nobody exempt from being in leadership, because there's somebody looking at you somewhere. Somebody's looking up to you. Somebody's watching you. No matter what kind of events you go to, if you're up at the ballpark with your grandkids and you're pitching a duck fit because somebody missed a call that didn't see it, you're leading. That there is a sign up there on the fence that says these are not major league players. They're kids. And the referees are human too. Now, can they be susceptible to mess up on purpose? Yes, they can, but they're human. Have you not messed up lately? We're all called to be leadership. Let's walk in that leadership role that God's called us to be. Let Him use us in the way that He wants to. You know, we've started a process in this community of walking and touching the homes of every house in this place, in this community, in this county. It is what's on the heart of the leadership of the churches of this community. We can't stop just because we've done a few. We got to continue moving on. And we got to show the love of Christ, and that's leadership. You know, there's a lot of churches that are not a part of it. Why? I don't know. But I can't answer for them. The only one I can answer for is me, and that's the same thing with you guys. You're the only one that can answer the question of, am I leading the way that I should be? Am I speaking the way I should be? Am I working in the place and the position that I'm supposed to be? Let's ask that question amongst ourselves, to yourself, and let God speak to you, and let's see what He says. And let's walk in that. Let's stand and let's worship for just a moment.